Two brothers' bond is tested to the limits when they encounter a fearsome mountain lion in the Californian hills while hunting. The animal takes them on, unafraid and unrelenting in one of the most ferocious mountain lion attacks in history. Only one will walk away. 21-year-old Talon Brooks and his 18-year-old brother Wyatt were as close as anyone could be. They did everything together and shared a love for the great outdoors. They were avid anglers and hunters, enjoying decoying ducks together and taking down deer during the season. Wyatt in particular was an exceptional hunter and even tagged Pope and young class blacktail bucks when he was just 13 years old. Talon worked with his father painting houses and cutting firewood whilst Wyatt was enrolled in the local firefighter academy. But on Saturday, March 23, 2024, their lives would come crashing down when they made the fateful decision to go searching for shed antlers in the Kelsey Hills. It was a hobby the two of them engaged in each year, but this time was different. It was the first day of junior turkey season, and because they were not actively taking part in the hunt, the brothers decided it was best not to carry a firearm. It was a decision that would prove fatal. Popular for hiking, mountain biking, and horseback riding, the Kelsey Hills, with their rolling landscape and panoramic views of the surrounding Sierra Nevada foothills, are home to deer, coyotes, and mountain lions. The brothers parked their car and began searching for antlers, but as they walked through the long grass that afternoon, they were being watched by something. A predator. It had picked up their scent and now stalked closer. It was hidden from view, its large paws placed carefully on the dry ground with each footstep. Its ears pricked and alert, his tan-colored skin camouflaged amongst the undergrowth. It was a mountain lion, a relatively small male weighing 90 pounds, crouched in the grass. Its nose twitched as it sniffed the air. Then it began walking towards Talon and Wyatt. The boys continued to scour the ground for antlers. Wyatt carried a small backpack to collect the antlers in. They bent down to brush away some undergrowth, unaware that they were being stalked. Then, when they walked down a bank and onto a track, they saw something stepped onto the track ahead of them. It was the mountain lion. It stood still for a few moments, not breaking its stare with the brothers. Talon and Wyatt froze. Then, following standard protocol for such an encounter, they began shouting and waving their arms up in the air. Together, they were clearly bigger than the big cat, but it was not deterred by the loud noise, nor the size of the brothers. To their horror, the mountain lion began walking towards them. Immediately, their hearts began racing in their chest. The adrenaline started pounding through their body as they realized that the mountain lion was coming for them. It was a healthy-looking adult male. It wasn't starving or desperate for an easy meal. For some reason, it was intent on taking down the boys. It trotted towards them, and Talon and Wyatt knew what was coming. They knew it would pounce on them at any second. Wyatt threw his backpack at the animal in a bid to scare it away or distract it. But the mountain lion didn't flinch. It continued forwards and then leapt onto Wyatt. He let out a yell as he was knocked to the ground. It was like a horror movie. It was all happening so quickly. Every hunter's worst nightmare was coming true. Despite being a relatively small mountain lion, its weight was made up of mostly muscle. Its powerful front limbs, its forceful jaws and long canines. It was a hunting machine, and Wyatt was no match for the wild animal. But he fought back bravely, kicking and punching it as it stood over him, biting down on his face and neck. He could feel the ripping and tearing of his skin. The mountain lion swiped at Wyatt's helpless body, slicing across his chest and torso, ripping his clothing and digging deep into his skin. He could feel the full force of the predator, but he refused to give up. One bite on the jugular and he would be dead. 1 inch to either side and it would be game over. But he had had more than just his fists and feet to protect him. He had his big brother. And when Talon saw the mountain lion on top of Wyatt, he brought down his fists on the animal with all his power. He delivered blow after blow, but the big cat refused to let go of Wyatt. Only when Talon jumped onto the back of the mountain lion did it loosen its grip on his little brother. Wyatt scrambled to his feet, but the mountain lion didn't back down. It may have released Wyatt, but its attention was now turned to Talon. It leapt onto him, tackling him to the ground, and the two battled for life and death. Wyatt screamed at the animal and hit it repeatedly, but nothing he did would stop it from attacking his brother. The animal growled, a deep guttural sound as it mauled Talon's face and throat. Wyatt knew time was running out for his brother. He had his mobile phone in his pocket, but there was no signal. The last time it pinged into life was back at the vehicle. The 18-year-old made the heartbreaking decision to leave his brother and sprint up the hill back to the car to call for help. It was an almost impossible decision, but he couldn't fight the mountain lion alone, and it was clear that the animal wasn't going to give up. Wyatt raced up the hillside. His legs were burning, his chest was sore. Blood poured from the devastating bites on his face and neck. It trickled into his eyes, turning everything around him a deep shade of crimson. The sprint back to the car seemed to last an eternity. Wyatt's mind raced. He was terrified that he had made the wrong decision. Maybe he should have stayed and continued to fight the big cat. Would his brother have left him? Finally, he made it back to the vehicle and reached for his phone. He made a desperate call to 911 and then leapt in his car and raced back down the hill. He screeched to a halt where the attack had happened, but there was nothing there. There was no sign of Talon. Had he fought the big cat off and made his way across the hill back to the vehicle? Wyatt jumped out and screamed for his brother. There was a pool of blood on the ground, but all was silent. Only the sounds of birds filled the air and the whispering of a gentle breeze in the trees. Wyatt held his breath, listening. Moments later, emergency services arrived and Wyatt waved them down. They rushed to the young man's side. He was clearly in a bad way. He was deeply distressed about his brother. It was time to get him out of there. Wyatt was hurried to Marshall Medical Hospital in Placerville, where he was evaluated before being transported to UC Davis Health in Sacramento for reconstructive surgery on his face and neck. Meanwhile, deputies El Dorado County Sheriff's Office searched for Talon. They followed the blood trail and the flattened vegetation from where the mountain lion had dragged its victim. It was easy to spot. After just 100 yards from the site of the initial attack, they came across Talon's body. He was lying lifeless on the ground. Lying next to him was the mountain lion, its muzzle stained bright red, its eyes fixed on the deputies. Not knowing whether the 21-year-old was dead or alive, they didn't want to risk firing a live round anywhere near him. But the mountain lion still was not backing down. It didn't flee when the officers approached. It held its ground, but they desperately needed to get to Talon. So they fired a shot into the air. At the sound of the loud crack, the mountain lion leapt to its feet and ran away into the trees. The officers rushed to Talon, leaning over him and shaking him gently. But it was too late. Talon hadn't made it. The mountain lion had severed his jugular and crushed his windpipe in the attack. It was a devastating incident for Talon's family, not least of all Wyatt, who owes his life to the brave actions of his older brother. The decision was made for officers from the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, accompanied by a trapper, to locate and destroy the big cat. They found it later that afternoon hiding up a tree. They took aim and fired, and the mountain lion plummeted down through the branches. It was dead. DNA analysis confirmed they had killed the correct animal, but officials were puzzled as to why an apparently healthy male mountain lion would persistently attack two young men in broad daylight. It was an incredibly rare attack that stunned the local community, and calls for reintroducing hunting of the big cats again began when news spread of the tragic loss of El Dorado's young men.